me about how to prioritize self-care in your life and what that looks like for you.
For me personally, it means, waking up with gratitude, making sure that I am feeding myself a nourishing breakfast. It means moving my body. It means, doing the things I don't love to do, like the administrative stuff. But I feel like if I can approach each day as a gift, then I can get through anything. I think I used to really just dread things and put things off and nothing ever got done. So I do my best to prioritize myself and what I need to do. And then I can feel like I can go to bed every night with a clear conscience.
Yeah. Oh, isn't that true? I mean, isn't that true? But I think you bring up a good thing with that whole avoidance thing. It's like, ugh. But then those things just sit with you if you don't do them, and you can't sleep at night. So I love that you address that, because no one really likes to talk about that, but that is self-care and taking care of those things so that we can put those, all right, that's dealt with. I rested. I filled myself up with the things I like as well. Let's move forward and check those off our list, because whether we like it or not, those lists are with us. I mean, we don't have to be defined by them, but they are part of our daily living. So it's surrounding it with the things that we need to fill ourselves up, but also doing those necessary things that keep us going and keep our days going and our household and lives going. Confidently setting boundaries. I feel like this has to be a really multifaceted topic with you, because of just when you kind of deliver to people, when's enough, when is too much, where to give your energy. Talk to me about your journey with boundaries.
It's been a long one, and it has definitely been some misses and hits and, figuring that out, because you don't want to set boundaries with anger. You don't want to make the person or people or group of people or whoever you're setting the boundary with to feel like they can't approach you or come to you or have a conversation with you. And, so I had to learn how to deliver my ask and deliver what I needed, and then make sure that I was also inviting the other person to ask questions. Are you comfortable with this? What do you need too? How can we support each other? Because I realized even though boundaries are individual, you're setting boundaries with other humans, and other humans have needs too. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to have good communication skills. Definitely don't try to set a boundary. Well, for me, I cannot try to set a boundary if I'm feeling emotional. It just doesn't work.
I think that's a really good point of making sure you're in a space where you can be open and objective as possible, and mindful about what's actually going on, and not have it filled with things that could taint what actually needs to happen. I think that's a really good point. And boundaries are tricky. I think we have to play with them sometimes, and communicating them and being open to some back and forth, especially when you are making changes that people aren't used to. They're getting used to you in a different way. I think that's really important to remember as well. So I'm glad you brought up that communication piece, because I think that's so important. Taking care of our emotional health as much as our physical health. What are some practices you use? And talk to me about your journey with that, because I know that's something you feel very strongly about.
It really is. And I realized when I began this journey 11 years ago that my biggest hurdle was how I spoke to myself. Mm-hmm. And my second biggest hurdle was that I was really always looking outside myself for that comfort and love and self-esteem, I guess. I can't think of another word at the moment, but I was always asking people how I looked, or do I need to do this? I just was always reaching outward instead of inward. So when I decided that, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but when I decided that this journey was going to be something that I was going to stick with, I really kind of just got quiet, and I got very comfortable with being by myself, because I was not. I didn't know who I was. I didn't like being alone, and I didn't know how to be alone. So for me, that was the first part of this. I had to address that.
Yeah. No, you bring up such a good point because I went through the same struggle. I was a goer, and I had to get comfortable being uncomfortable, sitting with myself and all those thoughts and self-doubt and shame and fear that were running through my mind that needed to be confronted and needed to be walked through and healed and pinpointed as to why, all those things. So I think that's really, really important that you brought that up. Now, was there a moment that got your attention that was like, this is time, we got to do this now?
Absolutely. I remember it like it was yesterday. I'll remember this for the rest of my life. I had just turned 40 and I was a size 0. I had just lost a bunch of weight in front of the whole gym. I mean, I was literally the topic of conversation. Everybody was like giving me praise. Oh my God, you're so, and so it was, you would think at that point in my life that I would have been on cloud 9, the most happiest. And I wasn't. I was miserable. And I realized that there was so many things from my past holding me back from being happy. And I didn't even really know what that meant. I knew that I wanted to be happy, but I had no idea how to get there. Yeah. So when I turned 40, I had a very visceral reaction to that. And I remember sitting in the gym at work by myself, and I just started like literal waterfalls were coming out of my eyes. And I just remember thinking that I have spent all these years thinking that I wasn't enough, that I didn't have the right body, that I wasn't beautiful and smart and funny and lovable and all the things that I just at that moment kind of had this realization that, yes, you are. You always have been. And let's move forward with that information. So it just started this whole all right, let's clean up the past. Let's do what we have to start talking kindly to myself and get out of these habits that I had created for myself. And it has been one of the best things I have done for myself. And even though, of course, life happens, we all have our moments, we all have our days. But at the end of the day, I know every day, I know that I am a happy person, a happy woman. And I can't wait for tomorrow.
I love that. I love that so much. And I love that, I bring up such a good point. We walk around and we see these people on the street that we work with in our communities and different things that we're involved in. And we look at the surface and we make a judgment about how their life must be. And so many times it's so far off base. It's so not true. There's so much more to the story than that. But because of these images that we're bombarded with all the time and the media, and now with social media, and I know we beat this drum and about social media and all the negative effects about it, but it's just amplified that. And you see our young kids, our Gen Zers just bombarded with it at such early ages, when they're so much younger than even we were having these conversations with ourselves and with each other and the expectations that go with that. So I think it's so important that we remember that those surface level things don't have anything to do with what's going on inside, and being mindful of when we compliment people, when we compliment other women, each other, look for those inner qualities, those inner beauties. Not that it's bad to say, hey, I love your outfit. I'm not saying stop that, but let's be really let's really focus, I think, on sharing. I love the insight you gave when we were talking about, your trip to, South America earlier, just talking about the things that contribute as a whole. I love the kindness you showed at so-and-so's birthday party being mindful of those things, because that's the stuff that really sits with you inside. And that's the stuff I think that we need to focus more on, and take the focus off of these other just very surface topics and the assumptions that go with them. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's so important. Size 0. I've never been a size 0.
Trust me, it did not last very long.
My gosh. I went from a size 14, 16 to a 3 for about 5 minutes before I moved upward from there. 0 is never in my butt. Nope. So I'm trying to imagine a size 0, especially at age 40, when our metabolisms are starting to drift downward a little it. So I mean, that to me sounds awful. It's like, were you hungry all the time? I mean, those are the things that, you think about too. And we're so judgmental of how we eat. You have a blog post that I loved about, something to the effect, I'm not going to get the title right. I should have wrote it down, but eating, at Christmas dinner is not going to kill you. Or you're not going to.
Oh, I said Thanksgiving dinner is not going to make you fat.
Yes, that. I was like, yes. I mean, because I think that's so, these things that get stuck in our minds and our heads. So that we have to break down and just feel free to live. Not that we don't want to be mindful, but it's so much more than about what we eat and how much we weigh. There's so much more that goes into it in terms of body type and what's healthy for you and how individualized that is. And not making, this cookie cutter, one size fits all, no pun intended, but really, that's kind of,
you're right.
That's what we're being shown. So thank you for sharing that. All right. How can we support? Well, one more thing before I dive into that. For your emotional health, when you were at that size 0, we talked about it a little bit, but that must have been were you exhausted from that?
I don't know if exhausted was the right word. It was overwhelmed. I was definitely overwhelmed because, again, like you said, that realization that my body was actually capable of being that small.
Sure.
And then the people around me talking about how small my body was. It was just a tension that I was not comfortable with. And that was something. So then here's the attention. And then my thought is, you got to do what you got to do to keep it this way. And so it was just always, I'd always thought about my body every day, every moment of the day, but now it was in a different space. It was like, okay, now you got to make sure you do your cardio. Now you got to make sure that you do this. Now you got to make sure that you, and so it was just another whole set of stress I was putting on myself that just was not necessary.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to say too, I also know people and have friends out there that struggle on the flip side where they're very thin and they can't gain weight. And people are always commenting to them, oh, you're so skinny. Oh, you're so thin. And they're just like, so it goes both ways. If you go about height, I mean, how tall you are. I mean, we have a family friend who she's tall, but the things that people will say to her and walk up to her and say about her height are offensive. I mean, there's no privacy or people walking up and asking somebody if they're pregnant. I mean, it's just ridiculous what people think is acceptable to comment about when it comes to how our bodies show up in the world. We've got to stop that nonsense. And I think that is something that's really important to address too, as we're embracing and loving our bodies as they are.
Can I say one thing about
Absolutely.
that? I just want to pipe in while it's fresh in everyone's mind. I think the sooner that we realize that talking about another person's body is absolutely none of your business. And if you can stop that, because all it is a habit, right?
It is.
You're trying to make small talk. You're trying to approach someone. And I mean, we all do it. I get it. But talking about another person's body, just to your point, you have no idea what they're thinking about themselves, how they feel about their height, their weight, their body size. So you're only exacerbating something that they've had to deal with their whole life. So if you can become a conscious person and just stop talking about people's bodies in general, I think that people will be able to kind of, let go of their hangups and let go of their fears and phobias a lot more.
And feel like people are looking at them or watching them all the time, and because of opinion that might have an opinion, even though that person's opinion means nothing, because we've been so kind of brazen with that lack of a boundary, lack of a cultural boundary there. So no comments about people's bodies. Keep your hands off their hair. And, leave it alone. How can we support ourselves, and you do this really well in your work, but ourselves and others in living unapologetically?
Well, listen, it's not a light switch. Unfortunately, I wish it was. It's going to take some serious work on your parts, meaning all of us, that we need to kind of step back and realize, where did this trauma, because it is trauma, right? It's trauma. Somebody taught you how to feel and think about your body, and you've just grown up thinking that was your truth. Or somebody said something one time that hurt your feelings about your body, and that became your truth. Yeah. So we have to figure out, when did that start?
Yeah.
And then once you do figure that out, you can forgive yourself, forgive that person, kind of work through that and let it go. And then you have to make a conscious effort of, how am I going to appear in the world moving forward? Am I going to feel that I belong, that I deserve, that I am enough, that my body is perfect the way it is? And then for me, because that's everything I had to do, but I had to say it consciously with mantras and healthy and happy and nice things to myself.
Yeah.
And then I realized that once I started to love Rachel and I started to feel good about me, I started acting more kindly to other women. I just thought that was such an interesting shift.
Yeah.
And I just, like you said, I do like to compliment women on their outfit or whatever, but this story happened to me recently. I hope it's okay that I share.
Absolutely.
But I was in TJ Maxx, and this woman walked ahead of me, and she was wearing some kind of Lily Pulitzer. It was, bright and fun and colorful. And this little girl says, "I love your dress." And I looked at the little girl and I said, "That was really nice of you." And then she's like, "Well, I love your purse." And I just was like, a little girl who knows how to compliment another woman already. I was like, keep it up, sister.
Yeah,
I just
absolutely.
Thought that was so beautiful. And so I love that story, because I want other women to know how easy it is to be nice to another woman.
Yes. And we are not each other's competition. We are each other's advocates, and the culture would like to pit us against each other and create that narrative, because it keeps us from being who we are. It keeps us from our power. It keeps us from living unapologetically. So yeah. And I love that you called that out. And that when you see those little kids and they do those things and they say those things, really affirm that in them. They will remember that, because that just lifts them up and glows and says, somebody saw me, somebody recognized and heard me, and that was and pointed that out and took the time to share that with me, because those things stick with you, the good and the bad, and so as much as we can affirm that when we hear that as well, I think is so important. And thanks for sharing. That's a great example. And I think it's so true. When you can get okay with yourself, it changes how you're able to relate to and connect with other women. And it also gives other women permission. When they see that modeled by somebody, then they're like, oh, I like the way that shows up in her. I want to show up like that too. So I feel like it just gives an unspoken permission almost to have, invite other women into showing up that way as well. The importance of setting and coming back to your why and your values in everything you do. I think this is something that you probably really, as you've gone through this journey, had to really formulate for yourself. Or what are my why? What are our values that keep me on this track of the best, healthiest version of myself that I can be, and how I show up for other people in that space? Because I'm sure you've got a lot of people that want to hear from you, have something to say to you. So talk to me about the why and the values that go with that.
That is a great question. And it does have to be something that I'm consistent with on a daily basis, because I just suspect that if I were to say, okay, I'm fixed, I don't need to ever work on myself again, that those 40-year-old habits would come back real quick. Sure. And so I do my best to stay conscious of how I treat myself, how I treat others. The things that, one of my big things that when I'm working with other people is that we need to learn our body's signals. And that could be our hunger signals, our tired signals, our stress signals, you have to learn and be able to attach a name to that. Mm-hmm. If my stomach is growling, you're hungry, honor that, eat something instead of saying, I'm not hungry, I'll drink some water instead, and I'll try to go as many more hours as I can. I used to do that to myself all the time.
Yeah.
And then of course, everything else would suffer because I wasn't nourishing my body and giving it the fuel that it needed. Yeah. And if we all start thinking about that food is fuel, it's gasoline for our car, which is our body. Mm-hmm. And now I have to make a joke. It's like with all these electric vehicles, like food is like, the outlet now. So, but I think it's important to be very aware of your different signals that your body is trying to tell you, because your body is smart, it's powerful, and it really doesn't need a lot of work from you. Right. You just got to kind of listen to it and do what it's asking you to do, right?
I love that. Listen to it and do what it's asking and trust it. We don't trust it. And we input this other stuff that we're getting outwardly, and we don't listen and trust what our body's going to let us know when it needs to be fed, when it needs to move, when it needs to sleep, when it needs to work out something emotionally, express some, anger or some joy, through what dance or a punching bag, whatever it is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, whatever you need to do, your body. And so being in tune to that and trusting that and responding accordingly, I think is so important. And seeing food for what it is, as that fuel, and having that healthy relationship with that. We have such an unhealthy relationship with food. And and we've got to unravel that and see that for the power that is in that, and adjust accordingly onto what we need. Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's so good. Living out of your own expectations versus others' expectations. This could be the theme of the whole conversation we're having today, because these body image issues that we struggle with come from other people's expectations, the culture's expectations, and then we take those on and make them our expectations when they're really not, when we're really not diving into what do I need? And I feel like that's the shift that you did at age 40. You shifted from going to the world's expectations to what your own body was telling you it needed to set up as your own. So talk to me about your expectations journey.
That has been and I'm still working on that. I'll be full honest. Sometimes you still have an expectation of a person, or feeling like you have to explain yourself when you don't want to do something, so it's something. But a girlfriend of mine literally just said to me on Saturday, I had to stop feeling like I have to explain myself.
Yes.
And I think that is super powerful. And it was the exact reminder that I needed, because it is true. You have to stop feeling like you have to explain yourself to other people. Mm-hmm. You don't. No. You can if you want to, but trust me, it's an energy suck, So instead of feeling like I have to live up to this person and my mother and my partner and, my coworker, whatever it is that we put on ourselves, we have to also kind of accept and realize that that's self-inflicted, and then just go ahead and get comfortable with the word no. It's my favorite word.
We hear that a lot from our guests, and I don't think we utilize it nearly as much as we should. No, period. And I am a recovering over-explaining champion of the world. I just ask my family. They're just like, no, Mom, no, listen, we get it. And stop. But I think we feel this obligation. And especially, I think, too, when we make a change in our lives, whatever that change is, we're trying to justify. And there's some people that are just not going to get it. Those just aren't your people. And that's okay. They don't have to understand it. If you're doing what's best for you and healthiest for you and living true to you, that's what you need to do. And it's okay if everybody's not on board with that. That's not a requirement. And you don't have, and no amount of explaining is going to bring them along. They are where they are. You can't change that. But you can live the way you need to live and not let their expectation bulldoze what it is is best for you. But it's hard to do. It's hard to do because we're surrounded with it all the time. So I think it's just important. But I love the no. I love the no need to explain. Both things that I'm working on. And I don't think we can talk about enough, but no period is a sentence. So yeah, absolutely.
And it's so interesting because when you do just say, no, thank you, or I can't today, whatever your answer, your quick 3-word answer is, it's just like, and it's done.
Right.
And it's done. And the relief is just so palpable, and you go on and you have a great day. So I really, really, I'm grateful for the constant reminders, because like you said, I too am a recovering explainer. I love that. I'm going to steal that.
No, it's an ongoing walk. And I've got a great accountability partner in my husband who will be like, don't need that. And my therapist, like, if I'm going to have a hard conversation, we will run through like drafts to make sure I'm not over explaining, because it's so ingrained. And I think it's ingrained in us from an early age that we constantly have to try to justify being who we are. And we need to get past that and to be our healthiest selves and support each other in doing that. Accepting the layered aspects of ourselves. I think that is just such an important part of the journey. All the parts of who we are, all the parts of our journeys, the good, the bad, the ugly, all those things. We want to talk about the shiny things, but we don't necessarily want to embrace the hard things. And I don't think we can love ourselves well until we can embrace all those parts of us. So talk to me about your layers journey.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think, and forgive me if I'm jumping ahead, but this example is perfect to what you just said. But I remember, every time I lost the weight, I'm like, I lost the weight and I kept it off. I'm going to write a book about it. And then the weight would come back. And of course, I couldn't write a book because I gained the weight back. And when I finally decided that the book was something I really was destined to do, writing about my failures, I realized was the missing link to my story, and that it was much more important to share with my readers about all the times I failed and all the times the weight came back. And I know in my depths of my soul that I put out an authentic thing into the world because of that.
Wow. I think that's such an important example and a thing to remember. And talk about accepting your layers. It's putting it out there, because I'm telling you, and you and I talked about this before we started recording, we are all battling this in some form or way. I truly believe that. And hearing other people's stories and the truth about it, the authenticity with that, the honesty about it, without, shame or fear or whatnot, is, again, it goes back to that living unapologetically, giving women permission to do the same, helping them understand they're not alone in this, and that it's okay, and that it's part of the journey, and get to that and look at what you've learned from it. What did it tell you about yourself in terms of where you want to be and where you feel the most content and happy? So such a good example. And I think it's all those parts. It's all those parts that make us who we are. In living out fields, finding empowerment, embracing layers, how does that affect your relationship with yourself and then in turn with other people?
That is a great question. And I'm so grateful that I have an awareness about it, because clearly when you're kinder to yourself, we talked about this a little earlier, you're kinder to others.
Yeah.
And I am so grateful for this whole journey, because I realize, now that I'm on the other side of this, I was not a good friend. I wasn't a good partner. And I was always chasing after the love and the relationship for not just, romantic partners, but from women and friends and my mother and, all those. I was always chasing because I never felt like I didn't know how to give it to myself. Let's put it that way. So once I learned how to give love and trust and honor myself,
sure,
God, it just was. Now that for me was like a light switch moment where I could just be a good friggin' friend.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's hard to be a good friend to someone else when you aren't a good friend to yourself. I mean, I really believe that. I really believe that, we hear that whole saying, hurt people. That's true. That's true. Unhealthy people can't act healthy because they don't know how to do it within themselves and within their own lives. And so I think there's so much power in that, and be able to break that down and recognize that and realize that within that, that's where the contentment lies. That's where the peace lies. Not in all these other things we've been told, these surface things, but it's within that in that journey of getting to it. And it is a journey. You have to be willing to like sit with yourself and investigate it and put in the time and work and face the fear. But I'm telling you, I'm on that journey. And I waited way too long to go on it. I was 50 before I really got serious about it. So you were 10 years ahead of me. But I mean, my hope is that, we're talking to women now. If you're in your 20s, don't believe the bullshit. Get on this now. It matters, and it changes your life and how you will show up in the world for yourself and for other people. If you're 70, it's not too late. I mean, whatever space you're in, take the time to do it. Take the time. Absolutely. We're down to the rapid fire. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
Okay. Number 1 is strength training. For me, that is my therapy. Number 2, I love to do face masks, like sheet masks. It's and I love to do a new recipe, to sit down with my boyfriend, and we're both just like, yeah, this is so good. And it makes me feel good that I've, learned a new skill. Number 4 would be, I just love being silly and dumb with my best friend who still lives in Portland, Oregon. And number 5 is I love to experience new things. That to me makes me feel enlightened. It makes me feel invigorated, and it just makes me happy.
I love that last one. I'm that way too. I love the new things. I love the fun that comes with it, and the learning and the spontaneity. I think there's so much in that. I love that too. I totally relate to that. All right. 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
I want to feel whole. I want to feel happy. I want to feel productive. I want to feel innovative, and I want to feel helpful.
Well, you're definitely helpful. No question about that. The work you're doing in the world for women and men, both, this is for everybody, matters. Again, your podcast audience, go to embracinglayers.com. You can find Rachel's website there. You can, on the sources document, you can find how you can get her book, how you can work with her, what you can learn from her. I invite you all, no matter where you are in your journey, to stop and take a look at these conversations and this information that Rachel is offering, because it is a universal struggle, and it's something that shows up in all of us in different ways. And so I invite you to really participate in this and take a look at this to see where you are. Just do an assessment. Even if you think you're doing all right, it's okay to stop every once in a while and just do an assessment. Make sure that you're on the path that you really want to be on, that's healthiest for you, not based on what anyone else is telling you, but for you. And again, like we said earlier, your body will tell you. Listen to your body, trust your inner knowing, trust what your body's telling you. And that's going to lead you to the place that you need to be. I firmly believe that. And I know you do too, Rachel. Anything else you want to say about what you offer?
I just want to say that even though I offer everything from an 8-week program to one-on-one coaching to, my book, obviously, I really want to help every woman and all women and men too. And even if you just have a question, you don't necessarily want to work with me, you just want to talk and feel that you're not alone in this, reach out. I will never not help someone.
No, I love that. Thank you so much. That again, just adds, I'm not even surprised to hear that from you. It adds to the authenticity of the work that you're doing. Field podcast audience, take a look again. Go to embracinglayers.com, find out how you can follow Rachel, learn more from her sources and resources that are valuable to her, and sit down with yourself this week and make sure that you are taking the best care of you based on what you need and what your body is telling you. Thanks so much for being with us, and have a great week.